Greetings, viewers. Welcome to Biology and Parasitology Hub. Today's edition, I'll be teaching Ascaris, specifically Ascaris lumbricoides. But before I go further, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Now, I will start with Ascaris lumbricoides. But first of all, Ascaris are found under the nematode parasites. They are nematode parasites. Now, Ascaris have two species. We have the Ascaris lumbricoides, and we have the Ascaris sum. So these are the two species of Ascaris: Ascaris lumbricoides and Ascaris sum. Ascaris lumbricoides affects man, but Ascaris sum affects pigs only. So Ascaris lumbricoides affects man, while Ascaris sum affects pigs. Now, Ascaris lumbricoides causes a disease called Ascariasis. Causes a disease called Ascariasis. Now, Ascaris, some people have the view that Ascaris is the largest nematode parasite, but that's not true. The largest nematode parasite that affects man is the Dracunculus medinensis, usually caused by Medina worms. So Dracunculus medinensis is the largest nematode parasite that affects man. But the largest nematode parasite, that's the overall, the one that does not affect only man, is the Placentonema gigantissima. So this is the largest nematode parasite. Now we are going to go over to the classification of these nematode parasites. Ascaris, they fall under phylum Nematoda. Then class Phasmidia. Before I go over to the other family and species, genus and species, I want to classify nematodes very well. Nematodes, we have two classifications. We have the Phasmidia. Or the Ceseniansa, or the Cesenantia. And we have Aphasmidia or Adenophoria. So these are the two classifications of nematode parasites: the Phasmidia or the Cesenantia, and the Aphasmidia Adenophoria. Phasmidia are those ones that have the sense organs called the phasmids. While Aphasmidia or the Adenophoria are those ones that lack the sense organ phasmids. So in Phasmidia, they have presence of phasmids, while in Aphasmidia, absence of phasmids. Now, nematode Ascaris fall under phylum Nematoda, class Phasmidia, then other Ascaridata, then family Ascaridae, then genus Ascaris. Then remember we have two species of Ascaris. That's the lumbricoides, that affects man, and the sum that affects pigs. So this is the classification of nematode parasites. Then we go further. Let us now look at the size of this Ascaris. Ascaris, the males are 15 to 30 cm in length. That's for the males. While the females are 30 to 50 cm in length. So the females are longer than the males. But both of them have the same diameter of 2 to 4 cm in diameter. So they both have the same diameter. Now, the females have extensive ovaries. When I mean extensive ovaries or uterine, they can house over 1 million eggs at a time. So you see how large the female Ascaris and how powerful it is. Then the last point about this Ascaris is that they are cosmopolitan in distribution. That is, it affects wide range of people or organisms in the whole world. That is, they affect vastly. Their effect is vast. That's what it means that Ascaris is cosmopolitan in nature. Then we cannot fully study a parasite without looking at the life cycle. So we are going to look at the life cycle of this Ascaris lumbricoides. Remember I said that Ascaris lumbricoides causes a disease called ascariasis. So now we want to look at the life cycle. Now the life cycle begins with the ingestion of the infective stage. And the infective stage is the L2 larva. Have you ever wondered why the life cycle begins with the ingestion of the infective stage, which is the L2 larva, instead of the L1 larva? Because there is something that is called embryonation. And what is embryonation? Embryonation is the molting of eggs from L1 to L2 larva. So embryonation, take note, is the molting of eggs from L1 to L2 larva. Now, for example, if a person suffering from ascariasis defecates or passes out new feces. Now, and the feces has Ascaris eggs in it. There is presence of Ascaris eggs in the feces. Now, these Ascaris eggs cannot just become infective immediately. It has to stay up to 9 to 13 days or 2 weeks before embryonisation occurs. So after these 9 to 13 days or 2 weeks of these feces being passed out, then the Ascaris eggs will now undergo the process that we call embryonisation. It will now molt from L1 to L2 larva. And once it's molt from L1 to L2 larva, it then becomes infective. That's when it's capable of carrying it and it will put in your food, then you ingest it. Then that's the ingestion, the first step, ingestion of the infective stage, which is the L2 larva. Then once the person ingests the infective stage, which is the L2 larva. Now, the eggs will then hatch inside the small intestine. The eggs will now hatch inside the small intestine. That's the second step. Then 3. Once the eggs hatches inside the small intestine, then the larva will now penetrate the mucosa and the submucosa of the walls of the intestine. So once the person takes in the infective stage, which is the L2 larva, and the egg now goes into the small intestine, then it will now hatch. Then the larva will now penetrate into the mucosa and the submucosa of the small intestine. Then it now goes through circulation through the blood. The blood will now carry the larva. That it will undergo circulation. That's the step 4. Undergo circulation through the blood. Then when it undergoes this circulation through the blood, now the artery will now take the blood containing the larva to the heart, and then when it now goes to the heart, it then comes back to the lungs or the air space. So when the blood carries the larva from the small intestine to the heart, then from the heart it goes to the lungs or air space. Then from the lungs it now goes to the respiratory tree. Then I will explain the hierarchy of this respiratory tree. The respiratory tree begins with the bronchus, to the bronchi, to the trachea, to the pharynx, and to the sputum. So the respiratory tree starts from the bronchus to the bronchi, to the trachea, to the pharynx, and to the sputum. Then once it passes through this respiratory tree, once it gets down to the sputum, then the person then now ingest it back to the small intestine. So you see, from the small intestine, the blood carries it to the heart, from the heart to the lungs, from the lungs to the respiratory tree, from the respiratory tree to the small intestine, from the respiratory tree then back to the small intestine. Now, take note. Remember I explained embryonation before. That embryonation is the molting of the eggs from L1 to L2 larva. Now, that is not where it stopped. Molting continues. Now, when these larvae are being taken from the heart to the lungs, then when it is in the lungs, it will molt from L2 larva to L3 larva. Then when it gets to the respiratory tree, it will now molt from L3 to L4 larva. Then when it's from the respiratory tree, when it passes through the sputum and reaches the small intestine, then it will molt from L4 to adult stage larva. So when the larva penetrates to the mucosa and submucosa of the walls of the intestine, the blood carries it to the heart, to the lungs, and to the air space. That's where the L2 larva will now convert to L3 larva. Then when it reaches the respiratory tree, it then converts from L3 larva to L4 larva. Then when it now passes through the sputum to the small intestine, it then now converts from it will merge from L4 to adult stage larva. Then the adult male and female larva will then lay eggs. And remember, those eggs will still remain in their L1 larva, and those eggs will remain in the body of the host till that host releases out feces containing these eggs. So this is the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoides. Now we will look at the diagnosis and the treatment of these Ascaris lumbricoides. Now, how can you diagnose a patient with Ascaris lumbricoides? Ascaris lumbricoides can be diagnosed by the identification or the determination of Ascaris eggs in a fecal sample. So for you to diagnose a patient suffering from Ascariasis, you must identify or determine the presence of Ascaris eggs in a fecal sample. And how can you identify these Ascaris eggs? Because these eggs of these nematode parasites they have similarities. Now, how can you identify Ascaris eggs? Now, identification of Ascaris eggs. The first property of an Ascaris egg is that they are not encapsulated. That is, they do not have shell. So this is the first identification of Ascaris eggs. They are not encapsulated. That is, they do not have shell. The second way of identifying it is that they do not have polar plugs. So absence of polar plugs. Another one is that they are warty. And strong in nature. They are warty and strong in nature. Another way of identifying it is that they are yellowish brown in color. Another way of identifying it is that their eggs are long and thin when they are not fertilized. But when their eggs get fertilized, it will now have an oval shape. So when the eggs of an Ascaris lumbricoides is not fertilized, they are long and thin, but immediately it gets fertilized, it becomes oval in shape. Now, how can these Ascaris be treated? The drug for treating Ascaris lumbricoides or Ascariasis is the mebendazole. So mebendazole is the drug for treating Ascariasis or Ascaris lumbricoides. Now, let us look at the pathology. When we talk about pathology, we are studying the diseases. Pathology, is the study of disease. So we want to look at the pathology of Ascaris lumbricoides. Now, we are studying the disease that Ascaris lumbricoides causes. Firstly, we are going to study it based on the migrating larva. Now, let's go back to the life cycle of these Ascaris lumbricoides. Now, when the larva moves from the mucosa and the submucosa of the intestine and of the intestine. Now, when this larva is migrating through the intestine, it is causing harm to this intestine, therefore perforating the intestines, and the intestine will start bleeding. So that is the disease or the cause of Ascaris lumbricoides in the human body. As the larva is migrating in the small intestine, it perforates the intestine, therefore making the intestine to bleed. Now, we are going to also study the pathology of Ascaris lumbricoides based on the adult worms. Now, based on the adult worm, we can use Plasmodium to illustrate this. Plasmodium parasite is not actually a nematode parasite, but it causes a blockage in the brain, leading to hemorrhage. That's why you see some organisms or some animals that get affected in the brain due to parasites or due to worms. So pathology of this Ascaris based on adult worms, although Plasmodium is not that nematode, but I'm using it to explain how it can cause or affect the human body. And now, Ascaris. Now, you know that Ascaris pass through the intestines. So as it is passing through the intestine, it is blocking the intestine, thereby reducing absorption of food. So this is the pathology of Ascaris lumbricoides. Then we will now look at the epidemiology. And also how these diseases spread. Now, epidemiology is actually the factors that makes this Ascaris to grow or to promote in a particular environment. Now, the humidity of an environment can actually encourage the growth of this Ascaris lumbricoides, and also temperature. Ascaris normally likes a cool environment, so that it can grow under cool environment. Now, we will now look at the spread of how this Ascaris usually gets spread. Now, Ascaris, it can spread through wind. Wind can come and carry, like the former illustration I gave, when a person that has Ascariasis defecates or pass out feces, and after the feces stays for like 9 to 13 days or for about 2 weeks, it's now molt. That's when embryonation occurs to L2 larva. Then the wind will now come and carry it. It's now infective. Now, when the wind carries it, maybe it's come and perch on the food of someone, and the person then now eats it. That's when the life cycle begins. Now, the person has already contacted Ascaris. Another one is when somebody that have finished defecating and did not wash his hands well, can use it to give you change. Then you used your hand, touch the money, go back, you did not wash your hand properly, and use it and eat. Now the life cycle have already started, and we have already contacted this Ascaris lumbricoides. Another one is when they use human manure to fertilize farms where they plant vegetables. It's not normal, because these Ascaris eggs will definitely get into these vegetables, and if they do not cook it well and they eat it, then the life cycle of Ascaris has already started in the body of that person. So how can we prevent and control the spread of Ascariasis? 1. By proper hygiene. 2. By preventing or avoid using human manure to fertilize farms, especially vegetative plants. So this is where I will stop for today. Our next topic will be on schistosomas. So stay tuned for more biology and parasitology videos, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Bye for now.